This podcast is a member of the Place to Be Nation family. Visit us at placetobenation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
By popular demand, Place to Be Nation Wrestling returns to the Dirty South for Talk'n WCW, an episodic wrestler showcase designed to educate, evaluate, and entertain, with matches spanning the intimate stage of Techwood Studios to the heights of Space Mountain. Talk'n WCW presents the best, worst, and most surreal offerings from World Championship Wrestling. So cast your gaze to the Turnertron with hosts Jennifer Smith, Tim Capel, and Greg Phillips.
Place to Be Nation. Hi, welcome to Talk'n WCW. I'm Jennifer Smith. I'm here with the Mr. Wonderful to my Mrs. Wonderful, Tim Capel. How you doing, Tim?
Jenny, we are Mr. and Mrs. Wonderful. We are wonderful. We are the Mr. and Mrs. Wonderful. So great to be back here again. And I keep wondering, when is the bloom going to come off the rose, right? We are, about 6 episodes deep now, and
Yes.
still kind of my favorite podcast going on right now.
No, low-key favorite.
Until
It's never going to
that's
go off
you.
the rose, man. We're blooming forever.
Right, but we're not just a couple, we're a trio. Who else have we got?
We got our friend, Greg Phillips. Hey, Greg.
What's causing all this? Why, it's the custom-made from head to toe Talk'n WCW crew. I am proud to be here among the faces of fear. The Butcher, Kevin Sullivan, Avalanche. We're all here, and we're ready to take on another exciting WCW topic. This has just lit my world on fire since we started this podcast. I'm ready. I'm raring to go. Excited to talk a little Southern Fried Wrestling with y'all.
Woo!
Indeed. And we have a very Southern Fried edition of Talk'n WCW tonight. I think this was my pick, right?
Yes.
Our topic of the evening, we're going to be looking at some WarGames matches. So, yeah, a little bit of a departure from our typical format of looking at wrestlers. Of course, we also looked at a tag team duo of wrestlers. Here we're doing a concept, talking entirely WarGames matches tonight. We have chosen 3. I don't know. I just thought it would be seasonally appropriate because when I think of WarGames, well, I kind of think of Fall Brawl, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But technically, WarGames was a tradition that started in the summertime. In fact, started the inaugural WarGames. It was held on July 4th, Independence Day of 1987. How about that? And it continued to be a summertime tradition for a little while. It was a touring match at first, meant to showcase the Four Horsemen as a faction, as you did back in those days. One of the many great inventions of the endlessly creative Dusty Rhodes, American Dream. He was the subject of our second episode. I guess I'll also say it was one of the many pro wrestling concepts owing its origins to Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. Why is that so weirdly influential? Like, do we have a tally of all of the things that came out of the Mad Max franchise and made its way into wrestling?
Yeah, so you've got the Road Warriors, you've got Lord Humongous, you've got the Match Beyond WarGames, you've got the Thunderdome.
The Thunderdome.
The Thunderdome cage. What else do you have coming out of those movies? Gosh, can you think of anything else? I'm sure there's others we're missing. Pretty much every indie gimmick that was a knockoff of the Road Warriors from the 80s, every little territory that had their own Road Warriors was ultimately a throwback to Mad Max. I guess it's because it was one of those action movies that was just, my dad talks about it reverently, those Mad Max movies that like they really captured the imagination of young, primarily male, defiant young wrestling fans back in the day.
Is your dad Jim Ross?
In some ways.
Imagine that. Well, it also came out, a lot of names came out of it that are just fun to say. Like, how fun is Lord Humongous to say? Let's face it.
Oh, Lord Humongous. That's good stuff.
I can tell you guys, I wish I had been old enough to attend and truly appreciate, like, this match in its earliest touring form, like when they were doing the house show circuit. I'm looking at some of those early War Games, and I see on July 15th, 1988, in the Richmond Coliseum. I mean, we're talking 20 minutes from where I live right now. Sting, Lex Luger, Nikita Koloff, and the Road Warriors versus the Four Horsemen with James J. Dillon. My God, to see that live, Holy shit.
And can I just say, those teams are wildly mismatched.
Yeah,
the Horsemen get saddled with JJ
with Dillon,
and the good guys get Sting, Luger, and the Road Warriors.
Well, I was thinking the opposite, but sure.
Well, true. Yeah.
But y'all know how I feel about Sting and Luger. So.
Right.
Oh, good Lord.
Wait, does that extend to Sting? Also, I thought it was just a Luger thing.
It's mostly Luger, a little bit of Sting, especially after the matches I had to watch for this episode.
Oh, man. Well,
my goodness.
Shadowing there. Well, that should prove to be some interesting discussion as the evening continues on. But I would just tell folks, if you want to watch some like extremely bingeable, like addictive pro wrestling, look at those, I would say, I don't know, Greg, back me up here, maybe 2 months worth of World Championship Wrestlings, those episodes on the network, leading up to that inaugural Great American Bash, again, July 4th, 1987. You will see some of the best promos ever, the best build, tremendously fun squash matches. I feel like it really captures that intimate feel of going out to the matches, as you say, at your local arena. Wow.
Arena. That's the arena, Cole. Taz joining our podcast. Talking ECW.
I haven't even really been drinking, and that just happened. So, but yeah, going out to your local arena on a Saturday night. But
all right, I'm good now.
It's a podcast, and it's out there for all the world to see. Just like my my vocal faux pas there.
Well, and it to your point, Tim, these are great promos that make you really want to see the good guys kick the crap out of the bad guys. Like, it's just, the Horsemen are such dirtbags, and Dusty and his crew are like superheroes, and you can't wait to see them show up and kick the bad guys' asses, but you're not sure that they will, because the Horsemen have a way of sneaking out on top every single time they've gotten into a confrontation with Dusty and his friends. So, awesome build.
And all that is to say, we did not actually choose any of the War Games from the 80s. Not because we don't like them. It's just, I think it's well covered at this point through various podcasts and remembrances. So we're going to actually take it over to the 90s. WCW would evolve into this great, huge national concern, inherit the great NWA tradition, and War Games has been repositioned as a annual event. So our first match is going to be from Wrestle War 1991. That was February 24th from the Arizona Veterans Memorial Coliseum. I was in Phoenix, Arizona. Who the heck chose this match?
That was me. I chose this match.
Okay.
This was the first War Games match that I ever saw in my young life, or any life, I suppose. And it always stuck out with me. From the time I first saw it, I remember feeling like this had been built to for a long time because the Horsemen had sort of been lingering around. I remember as a young fan, I thought the Horsemen were pretty much vanquished after the Great American Bash in 1990 when Sting finally won the World Championship from the Nature Boy. But like a cockroach that just won't go away, the Nature Boy came back to reclaim his title in January of 91. And Sting and his friends continued to just be cheated and robbed at every turn, every corner by Flair, Arn Anderson, Barry Windham, and, of course, Big Sid Vicious. So this was the big culmination of Sting and his buddy. Really, if you want to take it back to the ill-fated Dudes with Attitudes era of WCW, this was really paying off all of that. And so I chose this because it's one that stuck out in my mind, and it's one that I always thought had an interesting finish because, as you know, Tim, typically in WarGames, the heroes come out on top, but this one was a little bit different.
Yes, indeed it was. And I thought this was a really strong faction of the Horsemen, too. Even maybe not the most classic version. Once you get out of the 80s, it's a little bit hard to not only keep track of all the different iterations of the Horsemen, but to look at, good versions of them at the same time.
Yes.
But, you've got Flair and Anderson, of course, have to have, at least half classic representation here. But you've got Sid Vicious, of course, making his mark early in the wrestling industry, and Barry Windham as well. Can't go wrong with Barry. At this point, he's getting a little bit up there. It was always like your mileage may vary once you get past, 1989 Barry Windham.
He can be hit or miss, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But, he still brings it here. So, and that's who the match actually starts out with, right? It's going to be Windham and Pillman for the face side of the equation. So, smart way to start off, right? With from a work rate standpoint, anyway. I don't know that the strategy of Pillman going into the match, kayfabe injured, speaks well to the ring IQ of the face is necessary.
Well, the way they sold it on commentary, I thought was pretty good though, because the crack in WCW camera work didn't necessarily catch this, but apparently the commentators JR and Dusty mentioned that Pillman kind of jumped the line and kind of jumped into the cage, and that Sting and the Steiners were not happy about it, that they were urging him to come back, because they talked about on commentary that Pillman would probably be the last guy in the cage because he was the guy coming in injured, and he had a bone to pick. But he had a bone to pick with Barry Windham, so he wanted to get in there and carry his weight and prove that he belonged. So I thought Pillman was really the star of this match, and he came out and really wanted to show that he had the heart of a lion. Everything. One thing we've got to address before we get further into the match, I guess Arn must have been injured at this time, because instead of Arn Anderson, we get Larry Zbyszko on the side of the Horseman. So I should have done research on this. I apologize, and I will commit Harry Carey on myself later on by watching a Cubs game. But I'm just curious as to why Larry Zbyszko was subbing for Arn here. Was it an injury? Was it, did Arn have too many cat baths the night before and couldn't make it match? I just don't know what the deal is here.
I think he was just hungover from the night before when he yacked in a potted plant in a hotel lobby and had to be propped up by his best friend, Ric Flair.
As much as I do love Arn Anderson and watching him wrestle, I'm kind of okay with him on the sidelines in those pair of jeans that he's wearing tonight.
Eye candy.
A little bit hurts. It helps me a little bit, even though I can't see him.
And also, Jenny, just imagine this. With Arn, you don't get the lovely guttural moans of Larry Zbyszko when he comes in.
You don't know what kind of, moans Arn Anderson has, quite frankly. They might be guttural.
A man can dream.
All I know is he doesn't moan like Larry Zbyszko, who's pretty much here to get his ass kicked.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, that is the one sort of drawback here is that not only do we not have Arn Anderson in the match as a participant, we do have Larry Z, and it's sort of, could have done maybe a little bit better there. I mean, he's not an illogical choice as a replacement. He's Larry Zbyszko. He kind of sucks. I mean, what
Yeah. He's like the special friend of the friend group there with the Horsemen. I mean,
he stood out because it's like you've got the Four Horsemen,
Yeah.
Vicious, Ric Flair,
exactly.
Arn Anderson, Barry Windham, and Larry Zbyszko. It's like, and I'll give them this though, because I remember when I rented this VHS as a kid, the Wrestle War VHS. I remember watching it and I was thinking, oh well, actually, Sting's team is probably going to win because Zbyszko is the weak link. Pillman comes out and starts out on fire with Barry Windham. They're slugging it out, and Pillman is really trying to get retribution on Windham for his injuries that he had incurred apparently the night before, I guess. So Pillman is laying it into Windham, busting him open pretty early in the match. And then the Horsemen, this is the craziest part about these matches, guys. 3 matches we watched for this show, as usual. Every damn one of them, the heels won the coin toss.
Can you imagine?
Sounds like a conspiracy to me.
That's what I'm saying, Jim Ross. Mm-hmm. It sounds like a conspiracy to me because I just can't believe. You expect me to believe that there's not some sort of maybe somebody on the championship committee for WCW.
Oh my God!
It has it out for the heroes. I don't know, but nonetheless, the heels get the advantage here. Advantage even. You get.
Yes, thank you.
You get Psycho Sid comes in at some. I can't remember if he was second or third in the match, but he wrecked.
I believe Sid was last for the heels, wasn't he?
Yeah, you're probably right. Sid
kind of their ace in the hole.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so you get Flair in, you get Larry Z in, and they're doing their thing. They're doubling up on the baby faces. Of course, Sting comes in and just clears house. Like you guys know, me as a diehard Sting fan, probably my favorite part of this whole match was when Sting first comes into the cage, and because the crowd, this Arizona crowd, was kind of not the best, in my opinion, for some of these shows that we watched, but they freaking came to life when Sting got in that cage and hit that double clothesline on, I think it was on Flair and Windham. He lays them both out with the double clothesline, and that crowd freaking goes nuts. I thought the roof was going to blow off the building. So he comes in, gets this huge fired up moment, and then anytime either of the Steiner brothers comes into the match, it's electric.
Oh, yeah.
Steiner line.
It's interesting.
I got a Steiner line.
It is an interesting match structure where you start off with your work rate guys. I mean, that makes all the sense in the world. But next in is going to be Flair. You figure you kind of save him for later and get that late in the match star power. But no, he's coming in next for the heels. They keep that up with Sting coming in next for the faces. So it's like, holy crap, in this middle stretch of the match, we're pulling out our big guns,
Well,
and
the longer
the way
you can keep Rick in there bleeding, the better, honestly.
Well, this is true, yeah.
A gentle breeze blows through the cage at one point, and Rick busts an artery. But no, yeah, I like the psychology of it in this case because, okay, so Flair comes in second, probably unforeseen by Sting's team. So obviously, when Wyndham's in there, Pillman's got the issue with Wyndham, so Pillman's going to go straight for Wyndham. Yes. And when Flair gets in there, it makes sense to me that Sting has the issue with Ric Flair, so he's not going to let Flair. He knows this is his chance to get his hands on Flair for sure. So I get, like, even though I agree with you, it's kind of a weird structure. You'd think Flair would protect himself and go last, but in this case, since they switched it up, it made sense for the babyfaces to counter with Sting versus having one of the Steiners come in there after Flair. And then, Sid comes in as a heavy hitter. Or not Sid, Zbyszko comes in. Nobody really has an issue with him, but Rick comes in. And then Sid and Scott Steiner being the two, like, cleanup hitters really makes sense to me.
Yeah, yeah. And as you mentioned before, the idea that Pillman jumped the line, maybe Sting was supposed to be in there first anyway, so they're trying to recollect and go back to their initial strategy. So, and I did think that was a good dodge that you pointed out, by the way, that Pillman really shouldn't be in there first, arguably shouldn't be in there at all, but he just, his emotions got the better of him. So I appreciate that touch on commentary saying, hey, they're not sticking to the game plan here, and because they've become too emotional, this may be their downfall. And as we see in the closing moments of the match, well, what happens here?
Yes. So the two sides go to war. There's blood everywhere. It was humorous to me that a couple of things. They repeat a few of the same spots. Like, for instance, every time somebody at a certain point, the Horsemen have to give up on trying to smash Rick Steiner's head into the cage, because every time they do it, they throw him into the cage and he just looks at him. He just stands there and turns around and looks at him, and then the heel begs off. Or then if it's Sid, just stands there like an idiot and then tries to do it again, and it doesn't work again.
And then let me do it again.
Let me do it again. No, God, no. So, but then the other thing that I noticed that I swear I don't remember ever noticing this as a kid. Sid calling his spots louder than I've ever heard
so loud.
Wrestler call his spots. Like, just right on camera having a conversation with Rick Steiner. All right, you ready now? Rick Steiner, yeah. Huh? Yeah. All right, let's go.
I thought I was being weird by noticing that.
No, not at all, Jenny. It was blatant. Like, I can imagine what the audience was thinking at that time. Like, Pillman's chopping away on Sid, and Sid falls to the ground, and Sid yells at him, "Put me in the figure four!"
And one inch now he puts him in the figure four.
Oh, the best part of that, he says, "Put me in the figure four." So Pillman grabs his legs, and before he puts him in the figure four, he stomps his testicles. Oh, that's a good time. Anyway, yeah, so I just thought, I'm glad you guys noticed that too, because it was driving me nuts, which it never did as a kid.
Sid does. That's a Sid thing. He does not give a shit about calling spots. I've noticed that more and more as I've watched Sid matches and as I've gotten older, because he's someone who is extremely conversant, let's say, in the ring, but in a way that's extremely blatant at the same time. So, gotta love him.
So, speaking of Sid, the culmination of this match, the story of this match, Pillman, who's got his shoulder taped up from his terrible injury that he suffered, he makes it through the entire match. It looks like Sting's team is at least even with the Horsemen, maybe even has the advantage, but it's back and forth, certainly. Mm-hmm. And we should mention, by the way, that WarGames is, at this time, unlike what you see with NXT, I believe, or does NXT use the two rings? They just use the one, right?
I think it's two.
They've got two rings, but it's an open air cage.
That's right, yeah. So
which is two interesting... an interesting variation on the concept.
Well, I feel like the open air cage looks cleaner on camera because, like, with this cage in particular, it sags quite a bit. Like, I don't think Klondike Bill was on his game on this night, because
I would not have wanted to have Mick Foley and The Undertaker standing on top of this particular structure.
Oh, my God. Well, yeah, as we'll talk about in our next selection. Holy shit.
Yeah. We almost had Hell in a Cell about, 8 years before we actually got it or whatever. But no, that's for later on. But yeah, so it's a two-ring structure with a kind of what you'd think of as a Hell in a Cell around it. But unlike the Hell in a Cell, which tends to be really tall, this cage has a pretty low roof, which sets up cool spots like, I'll mention that in the next match, but it sets up cool spots that you can do involving the roof of the cage. It also sets up some danger, like guys that are trying to jump off the top rope, having to make sure that they don't bump their head onto the top of the cage. Mm-hmm. And the early portions of this matches, they have this convoluted explanation of the rules before everyone, sort of like you get a Rumble. It feels like it lasts forever.
The rules are actually very simple,
but actually quite complex.
Thanks.
The rules.
Rules. So Gary Michael Capetta sits there for like what feels like 30 minutes explaining the rules to the audience.
Yeah,
And he
I can
sounds confused as fuck. He doesn't know what
fumbling
they are
through his
either.
note card.
Ladies and gentlemen, here are the rules of War Games. There are 7 periods. At the end of each period, a new period begins. This period lasts 30 days. If it goes beyond that, you may be pregnant. Ladies and gentlemen, whichever team gains the advantage then waits for the other team to then equal the odds. And then, at the end of 7 periods, the match beyond begins. The only way to win, by submission or surrender.
What's the difference?
Right? I always wondered that.
I couldn't wait to bring that question to you guys. What is the difference in surrender and submission? Please tell me. Somebody out there.
I guess surrender means you don't have me in an actual submission hold. I'm just done.
Give up.
I'm just done with this shit.
I've had enough of this shit.
I do not want to have a metal spike driven into my orbital socket. So you know what? Peace out.
I both submit and surrender. But no, yeah, so Capetta takes forever to explain these rules, which really aren't that complex.
No,
They're
are.
not
They
as
make
complex
it sound
as they
like
make them seem. So, like, it seems like a John Coachman
Yeah, they
situation.
could say it so much easier. And they just, like gunk it all up with all these stupid words.
And then it leads to the
Sitting
match.
there watching it going, Jesus, give me a TNA reverse battle royal. I think I could follow it better.
It's like, and so you have to get through the early portion of the match, the War Games, to get to the match beyond, which is submission or surrender, as they say, which we've established are essentially the same thing. So we're in that portion of the match, and Sid somehow finds himself isolated in a ring with Brian Pillman. Hugest size disparity in the match. You've got Big Sid, 6'9", 320 pounds. You got Brian Pillman, who's about 6 foot even, if that, and maybe 215 or 20 pounds. And Sid just annihilates him, right? Just gets him in a position for his big finisher, the powerbomb. Hoists him for the powerbomb. Unfortunately, Pillman's legs clip the top of the cage, and Sid just spikes Brian Pillman right on the back of his noggin. And then, whereas in today's day and age, that would end the match. They would send medical personnel in to check on Brian Pillman. Instead, Big Sid picks him up and does it again.
But more carefully this time.
Yes,
so he's like, I'm not going to break your neck this time because it's already broken. So
now that I've already concussed you and possibly crippled you for life, I'm going to gently lay you down with this powerbomb.
Which I have to think that the finish of the match was really and truly supposed to be Sid hitting 2 power bombs on Brian Pillman.
Yeah.
Because by all rationale, you don't do that second, whether it's a botch or not, right? You do not do that second power bomb, repeat the spot, because it was fucked up the first time. Like, he could be in a bad way. That was a pretty sick landing that he took fully, on the back of his neck.
I was going to ask you guys, did that result in a legit injury?
I believe it did. I think Tim might have more historical info on this, but I remember when I was first getting on the internet, that was always the word was that Pillman was legitimately injured from it. Now he didn't have a broken neck, but I think he had a concussion. I think it was one of those it knocked him out basically, and so. But I agree with Tim. I think that was going to be the finish regardless, and they because Elegante, the friend, he comes out to protect his, as JR says,
the Lothario of Place to Be Nation as well.
Yes. Great Facebook follow if you guys have a chance.
Sure.
Oh my God.
But yeah, so he runs out to help, as JR refers to Brian Pillman, his little buddy, Brian Pillman. and Elegante comes into the cage, and Sid just kind of backs away, and Gigante checks on Pillman, and he waves it off. He waves off the match. He says, no, Pillman cannot continue. Which, if I'm Sting or the Steiner brothers, I might be a little ticked off about the fact that some dude who isn't even in the match was able to surrender on behalf of my team. But But yes, so because of that, the Horsemen, in I believe the first time that had been televised anyway, won a WarGames match.
How about that?
Yes, usually all the Arn matches I watch, he loses. Somehow.
Yes. But in this case, he wins as a manager.
Yes, there we go.
Yes, the Horsemen and Larry Zbyszko, I guess he was their secret weapon, right? That's who they needed to.
He took a boot to the face by Sid that had me like pausing and rewinding so I could watch it over and over again.
Apparently, Scott Steiner is getting ready to enter my apartment. There's a siren going on in the background, so maybe I called it a Hurricane Rana instead of a Frankenstein. I don't know. But in any event,
the Sharpies are coming out.
Yeah, hopefully I can survive the rest of the podcast. But one thing I wanted to mention about this match also is this may be the all-time worst collection of early 90s hair. Because you've got Ric Flair in his weird schoolboy haircut from
getting a jump on his 1996 haircut.
Yes.
Ric
Flair with his dangerously short haircut, his bowl cut is basically a Ric Flair bowl cut. And then you've got Barry Windham with a similar short hairstyle that looks terrible on him. And then you've got the Sid hair, which is always magnificent. You've got the Scott Steiner mullet, which is in rare form as always. And Sting's spiky hair, and then you've got Rick Steiner's normal Rick Steiner hair, which always looks weird as well.
Yeah, just kind of his dome.
You got to give it to Larry Z. He might be the only guy in the match with what you could classify as normal hair. Pillman's got his perm going, you know.
Oh my God, yeah.
I mean, this is maybe a great hodgepodge of these early '90s hairstyles. Would you say?
A Danny hodgepodge.
The Danny hodgepodge.
Nicely done. Yeah, it's a tremendous cross section of hairstyles that weren't necessarily even contemporary at the time, but it is what it is. It's wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed. So what did you make of this match, Jenny?
No, I really liked it. I liked Pillman biting everybody because that was funny to me.
Yes.
And biting the open wound as well.
Yeah, that was, he just, in my notes I wrote, biting Brian Pillman.
That's biting Brian.
Biting Brian, yeah.
I was hoping you would say that. No, it was awesome. I liked it a lot, and I was kind of concerned that the cage would fall in on them at some point.
It threatened to come down, that's for sure.
And
I will say that
Dusty at the end was like marking out, right? He was.
Oh yeah.
He was kind of.
Well, that in the spot where Pillman gets dumped on his dome.
Yeah.
Dusty, I'm pretty sure goes Jesus.
Yeah.
On commentary.
I will say that for what's kind of a, let's face it, rinky-dink, shitty cage, the visual of the pyro as the cage is being lowered was very, and something that I don't think is done enough. It gave it that feeling of prestige until you look at the cage itself and you're sort of thinking, wow, that's kind of like that's it. But I think that's everyone's reaction when seeing a WarGames for the first time, but it worked so effectively, just that claustrophobic nature of this match where you do have limitations. You can't do all of the aerial moves that you would normally expect from a lot of these guys. But it also gives you cool spots like Sting, who's pressing Flair into the roof of the cage because it's low enough to do so.
Yeah.
I forgot that he did that spot in this match too, because that spot is amazing every time I see it. Like, I just love that when he's pressing the guy up into the roof. Amazing. And you've got Flair's wailing on top of it. Ah! Fantastic.
Exactly.
They also did this like simultaneous submission hold like across both rings with all four pairs of guys. That was pretty well timed and looked really cool.
Yeah.
Yep. All the faces putting the heels in the figure four. That was a really just a visual feast right there.
And it's always fun to see how the heels get out of it by like reaching across and raking.
Whoa, there's Scott Steiner.
Train.
I don't know what the hell's going on outside, guys, but it doesn't sound like anything good. But anyway, so they always have to reach across and rake the eyes of the other guy that's holding their friend in the figure four or whatever. So it's fun. WarGames is always fun for the most part, but this was a fun match.
Yeah, it's hard to fuck up a WarGames. So
I will say about this one though, guys, I picked this one and I still like this match, but it's not as good as I remembered it being. Like I remembered it in my mind's eye being this like classic, amazing match, and it's really, really good. But it kind of I'm starting to see what Tony Schiavone has said about WarGames, which is that they always kind of have weak finishes, and this one it just kind of like it's a good finish, like it's a logical finish. But it kind of deflates the crowd. I didn't like Elegante getting involved. I thought he stood out like a sore thumb. And there were points in the match where they were just repeating stuff over and over again. Yeah. Like the ramming Rick Steiner into the cage and no selling it. Sid was particularly egregious about this. But so it's a really good match. It's a really fun match. But I have to say, this is one of the matches we've watched on our show, one of the few matches we watched on our show that actually does not quite match up to my memory of it.
I would say I liked it as much as I probably always have, which is quite a lot. I mean, I think is it one of the best WCW matches? Maybe. I mean, it's kind of up there for me. So it didn't really hold any surprises, I would say, but I've always pretty much dug that match. Weak finish aside, point taken there for sure, but it is sort of an unfortunate hallmark of WarGames matches. Jenny, you started to say something.
No, I just thought that in a match where you can't like pin somebody, don't you kind of expect sort of weak finishes? I mean, you can make like a submission like exciting, but it's not as exciting as pinning somebody anyway.
Right. Well, I guess
a good point, yeah.
I guess my thought was always, even as a kid watching these, in a match like that, you expect the finishing hold to be something like Sting, Scorpion, Deathlock, or Ric Flair's Figure Four, or Luger's Torture Rack, or some kind of submission like that, or a Magnum TA situation where a guy just gets beat down so severely that he just gives up because he's in danger of losing his career because he's been beaten so severely. But I don't necessarily want an 8-foot tall guy to walk into the cage and wave the match off. You know?
Yeah.
And we'll talk about the finish of the next match, which I think is actually a lot better than this match, but we'll talk about the finish of the next one.
Yep. Well, very good segue, because we're going just a year later to 1992. This was again at Wrestle War. This one from May 17th of that year. Jacksonville Memorial Coliseum in your state of residence, Jenny. And this was the match that you chose.
It is.
Why did you choose this one?
I chose this match because of the sheer, like, star power in the ring. The list of names for this match is like, holy shit.
It is huge.
And you know, the previous match had some of these names and also amazing names, but there's something about this match or this, like, combination of people that sort of set it apart for me. And it's from Jacksonville, which is a great city, in my opinion. And of course, Tony looks real good. I think I've said before 92 is Tony's year as far as...
Is that
you have said that, yes.
Do you agree with that?
I would agree with that. I mean, why...
No?
Man, I kind of like that. I kind of like that 83 Tony with the mustache.
That's a good choice. Yeah, it's valuable. Was there ever really a bad Tony, other than maybe 1999 Tony?
Now, what's wrong with 1999, Tony?
See, I thought you might disagree with that assessment.
Well, that's a good point.
Well, I mean, he didn't want to be there, but
That
he
is
still
true.
he still looked the part, is what you're saying.
Yes. So in this match, you have Sting's Squadron, which is real fun to say, which I'd shortened to Sting's Squad to make it easier for me and more contemporary for these kids these days.
Yeah.
Which consists of Sting.
We're all about the abbreves on this show.
Barry Windham,
Once again,
Dustin Rhodes, Ricky
Barry
Steamboat.
Barry Windham without anything shoved up his keister, by the way.
Yes, well, as far as we know. We don't get confirmation of that thus far. And then you got Nikita Koloff. So, yeah, that's weird.
a little bit.
A little bit weird. And then you have the Dangerous Alliance, which, I mean, okay, Steve Austin, Rick Rude, Arn Anderson, Bobby Eaton, and of course Larry Z.
The Cruncher!
Once again, yes.
With Polly Dangerously and Medusa.
By the way, by my count in this match, if you count managers, or if you count Medusa, 8 WWE Hall of Famers in this match.
Yeah, I mean,
Wow.
it's just fucking stacked. And everybody is so beautifully tanned.
Yes. Thank you.
And their entrance, when they walk in, the Dangerous Alliance in particular, when they walk in single file, it grabs my attention right away.
Fat looks better brown than white.
Boy, they look good.
I love you for that.
Strutting down there on that ramp, and they're just, everybody looks tight and fit and tan and big and just fucking ready to fucking wrestle.
Even Bobby Eaton.
Yes.
Looks
Oh, yeah.
more lithe than you might expect.
All knocking.
And then, of course, you get another rickety-ass looking cage. Even more poorly put together than the previous year, I do believe. It looks
I thought
bad.
the ceiling was a little higher, if anything.
Yeah.
Maybe
Not a
a
lot,
touch.
but maybe a skosh. Didn't seem quite as treacherous, getting people up for power
moves.
bombs or any
but
move. To
if
be
you
honest,
notice, Rick Rude, they do that spot in the match where Sting is pressing Rick Rude into it, and they're able to do more reps on it because Rude gets full extension with his arms because the cage is a little bit higher up. But I did notice that as well. But yes, to your point, Jenny, very rickety, very, very dangerous.
And so you got Paulie on the outside with his blueprints of
Love that.
what are we doing? Like what does it look like on the blueprints? Is it 2 squares? I mean, because
And the beauty of it is when the camera comes in to look at it, Steve Austin steps in the way and puts his hand in front of it. I love this. To me, it's little shit like that Paulie has always done that adds to the immersion, and he's genuinely strategizing. And if you listen to what he's saying, we're going to start with you, Steve. Austin, you're going to go first. We're going to try to win the toss. If we win the toss, we're going to get the advantage. If we don't win the toss, we're going to do it this, and he's going to go last. I love that.
What would have been great? What would have been great is if he'd said, "Now we're the heel, so we're going to win the coin toss."
You're going to go in, you're going to blade in the first 2.5 minutes.
in my mind that's what he was saying. Oh. And then Dusty was saying, JR was saying, they're getting it on hard and fast.
Hard and fast.
They're getting on hard and fast here. What are you talking about over there, Jim Ross? Contain yourself.
And these are guys who are huge stars at the time. I mean, you've got the star power of Sting, of course, and Rude, and even Barry Windham at the time. And then you've got dudes who are not necessarily Steamboat, my God.
Yeah.
Guys who are not necessarily enormous stars at the time, but will become so later on, with Dustin, really his first year, not his first year in the business totally, but first year getting a showcase in WCW, Austin as well. I mean, Jesus, just
think about
about
has come just in 8 months in WCW at this point.
Exactly.
And
Hard to believe.
and then you get Medusa climbing the cage. Once I think most of them are in there at this point. Her and Sting are not in there, but Arn is in there. So she drops a weapon to Arn.
Yes,
The weapon, of course, being a gigantic 1992 cell phone.
Yeah, like, okay. And then it looks like she barely clears the roof of the cage as she's trying to climb
my
down
God.
it.
Yeah, she's like, it dips down to such an absurd degree that it's reminiscent of that Foley and Undertaker Hell in a Cell match. And then Sting comes up after her, and he has to weigh twice her what she weighs.
Yeah.
And like, I'm watching it, and I'm like, he is so lucky that cage didn't snap, because he would have blown out his knee again.
Oh yeah.
He would have fallen to the ring, and that probably would have ended his career. But yeah, not Klondike Bill's greatest structure.
Bless his little heart. And like you mentioned, the crowd the year before was kind of meh for you, but this crowd was super hot.
Oh, they were awesome.
Yeah, they were great.
They were getting on Paulie's case right from the get-go with Paulie sucks. This crowd was into everything and everybody. And they were doing that what I love, that who every time somebody punches somebody. So good.
And okay, so I'm going to make this comparison, and I don't have any personal experience. In my imagination, this match looks like a wrestling orgy. And what I mean by that is that when you get everybody in the ring, like on the match Beyond, and everywhere the camera pans, there's something interesting going on, right? So there's some sort of pairing going on and some sort of thing that you really want to see. Whether it's Sting, like lifting Rick Rude up on, like powerlifting him up onto the fucking roof of the cage. And then everywhere you turn is just amazing action. So my mind, of course, immediately went to like, this must be like what an orgy is. It's like a wrestling orgy, is what I'm trying to tell you.
Yeah, but there are orgies. I'm certain. I'm not speaking from experience here. But I'm certain that there are orgies where there's some people that aren't doing any work. You know, there's some people that are just kind of enjoying the action. You know, getting just going to lay there and enjoy the love that dare not speak its name with multiple partners. You know,
well, but your imaginary orgy is quite, more laid back than, say, my imaginary orgy, because.
But to your point though, this is more of a high. This is a wrestling orgy where everyone's putting in the work, right? Everybody is doing something.
Yes.
Everybody is hitting the right spot for what they're trying to do.
Arguably, you do want an orgy to contain less blood.
Well,
again, your mileage may vary.
Let's not speak for Jenny.
Y'all know me, so.
Yeah.
Right. Just putting that out there.
Better.
Yeah. I get what you're saying, though, in terms of just the action. There's so much happening, especially once you reach the match beyond portion of WarGames, where it's almost like there's so much happening. The production values of 1992 WCW can't really even keep up with it.
They can't
You almost feel like it's great, don't get me wrong, but you almost feel like you're missing things because you're
absolutely.
not going to get...
You'll hear this big pop for something and this loud impact on the mat, and it's not on the screen.
Yeah.
And then JR will say like, "My God, Sting just did a 450 splash."
Right.
And then Bobby Eaton comes in, and the crowd goes mild. I mean, they don't give a two fucks about Bobby Eaton.
Yeah. Yeah.
But who do they give less of a fuck about, Bobby Eaton or Larry Z?
I think Larry Z got a bigger pop.
Oh my, the Cruncher.
The Cruncher.
I hate that nickname.
It's so awful.
They were trying so hard to get that over, too.
And he gets murdered again in this match.
He comes in the match and instantly goes,
Dustin takes him out. It's awesome.
I don't know why my Larry Zbyszko is Bobcat Goldthwait, but nonetheless, there it is. Yeah, there's so much action going on in this match constantly. Everybody is working hard. And what I love about it compared to the previous year is I feel like they don't repeat things as much.
No, they
Maybe
don't.
it's because there's more people in it. There's like one extra person on each team, but they don't find themselves repeating the same things over and over and over again. There's a lot of fighting, a lot of blood, a lot of punching, fisticuffsmanship, biting of open wounds.
Fisticuffsmanship, wow.
That is
It is
trademarked term.
It's a lovely match in its own way.
Yeah.
It is.
And you're not going to get the split screens or the instant replays, things that you are accustomed to today. And I don't necessarily think the match cannot be faulted for that. It's more a issue of the production. But that's something I did want to ask about that you just hit upon, Greg, was, do you guys have a preference for the 8-man or the 10-man WarGames matches?
I do now. I like the 10-man better.
Yeah, I was going to say, as a kid, I preferred 8-man because the first one I saw was an 8-man. And good God, what the hell is
Scott
happening?
Steiner again.
Jeez, I'm sorry, Scott. I love you. You're one of my favorites.
Man.
Anyway, but yeah, when I was a kid, I always preferred 8-man WarGames because that was one of the earliest ones I saw. But having rewatched, I kind of prefer the 10 because A, it makes the match go even longer, so that's cool, and B, there's just more stuff to do because I can understand how with just 8 at that time in particular, you could run out of things to do. I think adding those extra people in makes it more interesting. So I think the 10-man is my preference.
Oh, and I was going to ask you guys, like, towards the end of the match, Nikita Koloff comes in, and then he protects Sting, like he jumps in, or he like pushes Sting out of the way, or he jumps in the place of Sting. Anyway, he protects him, and then they have a bro hug.
Yes.
Right.
So this actually was a great moment. This actually was a great storytelling moment.
I felt like it was, but I didn't know
that
why.
Makes no sense out of context.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sure.
We're watching it. There's no reason. And here's a funny point about that as well. It's evident how little sense it makes out of context by Jesse Ventura. And I'll get to that in just a moment. So, backstory here. Nikita Koloff, it was a big part of the NWA in the late 80s, right? He was the U.S. champion, I think, at some point in 88, TV champion, something. He leaves. He goes away, take care of his sick and ailing wife, and he leaves wrestling for a while, comes back to WCW in 91, and when he comes back, he makes his reappearance in the 1991 WCW Match of the Year, which was Sting and Lex Luger versus the Steiner Brothers. He interferes in the match. He goes to hit Lex Luger, who he's angry at. He blames Lex Luger for stealing the United States Championship from him years ago. And he misses...
That was their feud at the time.
Yeah, he misses Luger, because at the time Luger was a heel when Nikita left. So he misses Luger, hits Sting instead, and costs them the match against the Steiners. So this starts a feud between him and Sting that turns into this kind of blood feud between them. They have a strap match or a chain match or some shit at Great American Bash, and it sucked, and Nikita Koloff won. Point, for reasons that I don't really know, maybe he got injured, I don't know, Nikita Koloff vanishes shortly after that. He beats Sting, and then he goes away. And then in the build-up to this match, Koloff makes his return. And so the story going into this match, one of the stories going into this match was, can Sting's squadron trust Nikita? Because the last time anybody saw Nikita Koloff, he was attacking Sting and beating him down and stuff. And now the big question was, when it comes down to it, was this all an elaborate ruse? Was this all an elaborate setup by Koloff to get Sting in a cage, vulnerable? Mm-hmm. And he gets in there, and so Sting's still not sure whether to trust him. Imagine that, Sting not trusting someone. So Nikita pushes him aside and takes the bullet for him, basically. And that's all that Sting needed to see to prove to him that Koloff was legit. So they do their high five and their bro hug, get a huge pop for it, and all right, everybody's suddenly like, yes, Nikita's on our side now. We can cheer for him again.
That makes sense.
Yes.
But here's the part about Jesse the Body. So Jesse Ventura joined WCW in October of 91, or November of 91 maybe, and one of those 2 months. And so he clearly had done absolutely zero research on WCW's product, because when they have that big moment, then they clothesline down the heels, and before they do the bro hug, JR's like, now what's going to happen here? Can Sting trust Nikita Koloff? And then Jesse goes, I don't understand what their problem is. They're tag team partners, aren't they? And it's just like,
why is he hugging his own team member?
Yeah, I don't understand what they're staring at each other for.
Yeah.
They should be attacking the Dangerous Alliance.
See, I appreciated that from my novice point of view. So thank you,
And
Jesse.
And JR just doesn't explain it.
No, he
He
just
just lets
whatever.
it go and starts making outlandish noises. Like, oh God. This is on fire, folks! Ah!
I think that's more evidence of my orgy comparison when you have Jim Ross orgasms.
This is very much what an orgy would look like to JR, I think.
I agree.
Maybe if you threw in Danny Hodge and you already have Austin and Brock, and you have Austin in there already, and maybe if you threw in Dr. Death, then it would truly be an orgy. So.
And then, of course, you have some fuckery here with the ropes. And Larry Z becoming a, what do you call, I think JR said, I don't think he has ring maintenance on his mind here.
Because Jesse keeps saying, I don't know why Bobby Eaton is taking the time to try to repair the ring. He should be focused on wrestling. They're like, I don't think he's got ring maintenance on his mind, Jess.
Thank you. I was hoping you would say that. So he gets, Bobby Eaton gets, he kind of assembles. It's so funny because I rewinded it a couple times so I could kind of watch what he was doing, and he takes things apart and then he screws things together. And what are you
He is doing some ring maintenance.
It's hilarious. And then,
it's so.
I tell you, the carpenter Arn Anderson should have been doing that.
I agree.
This for 25 years, this has made no sense to me. So the idea is to get the iron hook, right, and hit your opponent with the iron hook. They have the iron hook. It's there. It's sitting on the mat, and Eaton picks up the hook and reattaches it to the third one.
Maybe it was a timing issue. It's not time for this yet. And let me fix it real quick. I don't know.
Yeah, the camera wasn't supposed to catch that.
No,
it's one of the things going on in the ring. He's going, by God, for all the shit happening in this ring right now, they're going to show me putting the ring back together.
So Larry Zbyszko ends up with it, and then ends up hitting Eaton with it when he was trying to hit Sting, I think.
Yes, that's correct.
And
Sting gives Larry Z a karate chop to the neck.
And then it's all over at that point.
Yes.
Ends up getting the submission. Also, sort of anticlimactically.
Yes.
A lot of the first match that we watched. But it sort of is what we're doing at this point.
I'm with you on the idea of the heels slipping on a banana peel, but the way that it's done here leaves a little bit to be desired, for sure.
The weakest arm submission in the history of wrestling.
Sting did do well, though. I like Sting in this match, and it takes a lot for me to say that, but
yeah,
I kind of do.
I thought Sting. I talked about Pillman in the first one. I think Sting was great.
Yeah, he was.
But and even trying to make that armbar look vicious, the yell that he let out when he put it on.
Right.
I appreciate that, but gosh, guys. This match, if this match ends with the Scorpion Deathlock instead of an arm lock, it's probably my pick for the best WCW match of all time, which I know it's a lot of people's pick for that anyway. That's how much I love this match. I freaking love this match. I had forgotten. It's actually better than I remembered it in my mind. To me, it's the best WarGames, and they have a finish right there. If Zbyszko misses Sting and hits Bobby in the back instead of on the arm, and then Sting puts him in the Scorpion Deathlock and finishes it with that, I think it's an amazing finish. But as it is, I just can't get behind.
It's an easy fix, yeah.
It's an easy fix. I can't get behind that stupid arm lock being the end of the match. But still, I just thought this match was amazing other than that.
I think they try to make up for it a little bit at the end because they had a little post-match fuckery with the Dangerous Alliance, and they're all blaming Larry Zbyszko for being a fucking dumbass.
As they should.
As they should. And they're all kind of ganging up on him and yelling at him, and Paulie's in the ring just kind of going nuts. So it's...
Larry's going, ah!
Yeah, it takes the sting out of it a little bit.
That was great because even on commentary, JR's like, it looks like Paulie is blaming Larry Zbyszko for what happened. As well he should. Jim Ross.
I thought that Arn Anderson got some good shine in this match.
Yeah, he did.
He gets a lot of his shit in. DDT, Spinebuster, of course.
Bleeding all over the place.
Blood, yes.
He does that funk spot where he gets punched and then swings at the air. And then
yes, oh my God, I love when he does that.
Well, he also does the Arn Anderson spot where he gets his head stuffed between the two rings.
Yes, also love that.
That may have been, the source of some of his subsequent neck problems, but
perhaps
looks pretty cool, I will say. A lot of color in this match too. You've got Wyndham and Austin and Dustin at some point. I don't remember when exactly Dustin got busted open, but wow, they cut to him at one point and he was a mess.
Yep.
So very cool stuff.
Arn gets busted as well.
Right. Yep. The blood on Wyndham's taped fist that they made such a big deal out of looks, just really it's one of those things that it's not actually vicious at all in the context of a worked wrestling match, but looks like it is. And that's the illusion
is the point, right?
Yeah, that's the point.
That's
exactly.
I super love this. And you said that people consider this like the best match of WCW?
A lot of people do.
Some people do.
I mean, clearly they're wrong about that, but I mean, it is high up there, in my opinion. It's
great. And Paulie Dangerously was great in this match, too. He never shuts up the entire time, shouting instructions from ringside. Yep. He's outstanding. And Medusa as well. She does a great job with what her role is. So it's one of those matches with a collection of talent that, gosh, God, this might be one of the greatest collections of talent in one match that we've ever seen.
Absolutely.
I can't argue with that.
Well, we talked about the matter of trust in this match, particularly pertaining to Sting here. And we're going to see that play out on a much more operatic stage in our next selection. But first, we've got to take a break, pay some bills. So we're going to do that here on Talk'n WCW. We'll come back and take it home with our final WarGames match chosen by me. Please stick around and we will reveal that after the break.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
Place to Be Nations, JT Rosero and Chad Campbell here. We want to let you know that we have over 24 podcasts available on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and PlaceToBeNation.com. We now offer them to you on two great feeds. On the Place to Be Nation Wrestling feed, we dive into topics running the gamut from today's WWE to the glory days of yesteryear and the ins and outs of the territory days. In addition to our full-length shows, we also deliver to you special pod blasts on topics old and new.
The Place to Be Nation Pop feed is a veritable treasure trove of great content. Offer tremendous shows covering the land of movies, television, life, comics, and sports, brought to you by the most knowledgeable and insightful folks in the podcast world.
You can find all these great shows, plus archives of our past podcasts from over the past 8 years as well by subscribing to both feeds on iTunes. And while you're there, be sure to rate and leave feedback as well. All of these shows, plus others, available on PlaceToBeNation.com, where we cover pro wrestling, sports, movies, comics, plus in-depth search projects, and much more. Be sure to support our site by using www.PlaceToBeNation.com/Amazon when doing your online shopping. We want to thank our friends at Boneheads Wing Bar, ProWrestlingOnly.com, and TheHistoryOfWrestling.com as well. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr. PlaceToBeNation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
Place to be Nation Wrestling. Welcome back to Talk'n WCW, where tonight we are talking some WarGames matches. And before we get back to it with our final match that we'll be examining on this edition, we've got to tell you about some happenings around the nation that you can get in on. Starting first on our sister feed, that being the Place to be Nation Pop feed, we have the Marvel Age podcast, which I am one quarter of, the Sarcastic Four, delving into 1971. It's going to be the first of 3 parts covering that year. Check that out, Place to be Nation Pup. We also had the 8th episode of Laugh-In Theater with Andy. He welcomed hard-traveling fanboy Greg Phillips. Hey, Greg.
Hey.
How was that episode? What movie did you watch with Andy there?
I watched one of my favorite movies of all time, Austin Powers, International Man of Mystery, and had a wonderful time chatting about this great film with Andy. I will be honest to listeners before they delve into that one, I am fairly certain I didn't contribute much to it because I found myself watching the movie and just giggling like Ric Flair on a podcast.
Yeah, that'll happen with Laugh-In Theater. I know the feeling well. Of course, you and your regular compatriot, Nick Duke, other half of the hard-traveling fanboys, you guys concluded X-Men month, X-Month, as I like to call it, did a long book Hunters, and reviewed Ed Piskor's X-Men Grand Design. What a ambitious exercise in retconning for the sake of the narrative to make a better story. And it's not really what you do with retcons most of the time. So very interesting experiment there by one Ed Piskor. And you guys did a great job bringing that up. And Grand Design, that series is now finished. So perhaps you'll be revisiting it?
Perhaps so. In fact, I this doesn't happen to me very often anymore with comics, unfortunately. But I was so amped after reading this X-Men Grand Design. Kind of a spoiler for the podcast, I guess. But I was so amped after reading this. I wanted to see what he did next. So I went ahead and started reading Second Genesis, the parts 2 and 3 of this 6-part story. And have really enjoyed that to this point as well. I haven't finished it yet, but I'm enjoying reading it, and so I'm going to read it all the way through. Man, he's hooked me on this. I have to see how he manages to translate the increasingly galactic and widespread stakes of the X-Men universe.
Yeah, no doubt. One to look forward to. I want to get my hands on that too. Something I actually want to physically own. And I don't own physical media, especially physical comics, too often these days. So that says a lot. So the newest weekly comic show on Place to be Nation Pop, that is DC For You with Russell Sellers and the manager, Todd Weber. They give you monthly current events in the DC comic book world. So for June of this year, they're going to be covering all the happenings in DC Comics. We had another edition of Songs with Friends. They're up to episode 29 now. And that was Steve and Kelly covering Kenny Chesney's The Good Stuff. And then Fuel's Shimmer. Wow, getting flashbacks there to 2001. Geek and Sassy, Jenny, This Is You. And me.
And you.
And Miranda. Yeah, special guest joining you two lovely ladies. We did a recap of Season 2 and preview of Season 3 starting soon. Starting as of maybe the time you're hearing this podcast. Stranger Things. Anything else you'd like to tell folks, to titillate them with that episode, that drop of Geek and Sassy?
With that drop of Geek and Sassy, you can look forward to things like my hatred of Nancy.
She's a sweetheart.
My lust of Hopper.
Okay, Daddy Hopper. Very good.
Yeah.
All right. We also had the Glenn Butler Spectacular that being Glenn and his brother Scott. They discussed / debated the slate of Democratic hopefuls for the upcoming 2020 presidential election. Boy, are there a lot of them. But check out that show. Pretty insightful, pretty entertaining as well. And then finally, NBA Team Podcast, Adam Murray, Andrew Reish. They are reflecting on what has been quite the last week in NBA land. Are the playoffs finally done, guys? Bring me up on this. Smarten me up.
No, my understanding, Tim, is that the NBA playoffs will continue through the end of 2019. Actually, after they start the next season, this past season's playoffs are still going to be going.
What period are we in of the playoffs? Are we at the game beyond yet?
We are not. We are in period 4 right now, and out of a possible 7 periods, and so the game beyond is not even started.
Gosh,
Larry Zbyszko is actually coming off the bench for the Golden State Warriors in this one, so it should be interesting to watch.
Oh my goodness, Jenny, why don't you tell the folks about the next big project that you can vote on in Place to Be Nation World?
The next one is our Greatest Songs of the 80s tournament, which has been rebooted and has started back. So you can like our Facebook page, PTBN's, I think it's Place...
No, it's PTBN's.
Is it? Okay.
Yep.
PTBN's Greatest Songs of the 80s. You just like our page, and then you'll see the polls daily. We have 6 polls, and you just click your little favorite one there. And then
we love when you see our polls.
Yes.
Oh. Well, we're doing this on Twitter as well, right?
Yes. So like I
That's your
told
preference.
Tim, in which he told me I was being ridiculous, but if you have trouble deciding between 2 songs, you can just vote on one on Facebook and the other on Twitter.
I like that.
And he told me
It
that
is
just cancels out my own vote, but I don't see it that way.
It's true, though. I mean, you must acknowledge that it is both true, and yet your approach is valid.
Yes.
You have to follow your heart, so
that's what I
do what you need to do.
It's like that classic Madonna 80s song, open your heart to voting in 2 different polls, maybe. Something like that.
Has that song come up yet?
I don't think it has. I know there have been several Madonna songs, or Madge, as they call her.
Is that what they call her?
I saw that somewhere. I don't know if anyone actually said that in real life. I saw it on Twitter. Somebody called her Madge.
Is that her British name?
I don't know. It might be. She did develop into somewhat of a Brit over time. Not that there's anything wrong with that, of course.
Yeah. Notable affectation there. Greg.
Yes, sir.
What is going on our native feed, Place to Be Nation Wrestling?
I'm so glad you asked. Over on the Place to Be podcast, Justin Scott and Steve Bennett are back inside the home office for a deep dive into the 9/30/89 Madison Square Garden house show. So this would have been post-SummerSlam, pre-Survivor Series, building up undoubtedly the ongoing feud between Randy Savage, Zeus, and Hulk Hogan and his friends. Unless they weren't on this house show, in which case I retract everything I just said.
Well,
JT and Chad open up the 1996 pay-per-view year with a look at the Royal Rumble on the latest Wrestling Warzone. Curious to get their take on this show. I'm a huge Bret Hart fan. Not my favorite Bret Hart championship match on this one, as he wrestled the Undertaker.
I just remember which one. Yeah, that's a rough one.
In a babyface match, not the best match in the world, but we'll see what JT and Chad have to say. PTB and staff members Jennifer Smith, hello there, Drew Wardlaw, and Matt Souza gather together to break down the hidden gem collection now of the 1986 Crockett Cup. Tell us about this podcast, Jenny.
It was super fun. So the Crockett Cup there in 1986 was the very first one. And so if you really enjoy 80s tag team wrestling, this is the show for you. If you enjoy no commentary, this is also the show for you. But I had a really, really fun time talking about it with Drew and Matt, and it was Matt's first podcast, and he did a great job.
Oh, it's compliments to Matt then. Yeah, this is something very, very near and dear to our hearts, and I'm glad that it came from your editorial office, Jenny.
Yes.
Yes, and I think I'm interested in checking this show out. I plan on watching it soon, and then listening to the pod to accompany it. So that should be fun. Maybe if they release all the Crockett Cup footage that they have, one day we can do a Crockett Cup talk in WCW. Wouldn't that be something?
That would be amazing.
Down for it.
This was not the only year of the Crockett Cup, as we know. Mm-hmm. So, in the 10th episode of Row 1, Seat 1, Ben welcomes documentary filmmaker and wrestling superfan John Filipavage to the podcast. On episode number 129 of Main Event,
I love you for that.
Scott, Nate, and Steve preview AEW's Fighter Fest, ROH's Best in the World, and recap classic total nonstop action from 2002. Did you guys check out Fighter Fest over the weekend?
Oh my God, yes.
Parts of it, yes.
Yes.
Parts of it? What do you mean parts of it?
I didn't get in until I had a non-wrestling fan at my house, so she wasn't all about it. And so we checked out like kind of part of one match, and she was like, I don't know about this. And so I had to kind of put it on pause until later on. But I saw some good shit. Yeah, I saw the Moxley match. It was really fun.
There was some good shit. I mean, I have my issues about certain things that aren't worth getting into here, but top to bottom, I thought it was thoroughly entertaining and kind of a breath of fresh air. So
yeah, I thought Cody and Darby Allin had a really good match. I thought the 6-man tag was really good. The women, I thought the triple threat match with the women was really good. So. Really good stuff all around. Exciting stuff from AEW. Somewhat reminiscent, even in some of the minor production issues, somewhat reminiscent of our beloved WCW at times. So
exactly. And that's the thing. I kind of love how Cody is this, not even low-key, like he's just sort of a WCW nerd and is, bringing back a little bit of that mentality, but with more of a contemporary eye towards let's actually try to do good business and not be stupid about it.
Right.
What if Cody brings back the King of the Road match?
Oh, with that con money, that beautiful con money, I think he might be able to do it.
I mean, he's trying to get his dad's old trademarks, right?
Yeah.
That the WWF, that Vince hasn't gobbled up yet. So it could have. Do you think Vince really had his eye on WCW King of the Road? I bet you that one has lapsed.
I bet it would too. And then you've got like think of the other matches you could have. Like what was the 1999 hardcore match they had on pay-per-view where they're at like a junkyard?
The Junkyard Invitational,
yes.
Junkyard Invitational, what?
Yeah, for the WCW Hardcore Championship, the somewhat short-lived WCW Hardcore Championship. I say it's short-lived because their champion, Ming, left the promotion and went back to WWE. So that was that.
But the interesting,
I mean, about a year later, but still.
You could also bring back something like the Martial Arts Challenge from Uncensored 95. You could bring back the Bunkhouse
versus Wrestler.
Boxer versus Wrestler. I would be stunned legitimately if by the end of the year AEW doesn't have a Bunkhouse Stampede.
Oh my god.
Anyway, but that's not all. We're not done with that yet. The read yet.
Yeah, we're not.
On PlaceToBeNation.com, I just spit on myself. That's disgusting.
That's okay.
PTBN's tribute to 1994 is off and running with pieces on the Best Picture nominees for the 66th Academy Awards, the 1994 World Cup, and the miniseries The Stand. Also, Excellent Network Adventure Team is back with a look at ECW One Night Stand 2006. A show.
Good-ass show.
Yes, it is. Underrated, in my opinion. Check out our social media pages and message board at bigelow34.proboards.com for information on joining our greatest WWE pay-per-view and TV match ever project. Get in today on the conversation and start researching your list. This is basically where we compile a list of our 100 favorite matches in the history of World Wrestling Entertainment / the World Wrestling Federation / the Worldwide Wrestling Federation / if you're Lee West, Capitol Wrestling in the 50s. Every great match you've ever encountered from WWE.
Well, you know what else we're doing? We are hosting live watches on occasion, on about a weekly basis. Take about, 3 to 4 matches of the 100 trillion nominees on the greatest WWE pay-per-view and TV match ever project, and we have some fun with them. We sit down, we sync up, and we watch. So, want to get on that action, I would just say, kind of hit me up informally, like on Facebook, on Twitter. I am at Psych68 on Twitter, probably the best, most direct, easiest way to reach me, or go through one of the aforementioned Facebook groups, however you want to get in touch with me. Come on, it's not difficult.
Look at you inviting strangers for the DMs.
What the hell? I mean, let's just go ahead and blow the doors open. I mean, those group watches, you want to get
I thought we
bodies
were
in
exclusive.
It, you know?
Are we just doing anybody that just slides in your DMs, Tim?
Look, I mean, let's face it. I'm pretty desperate for those DMs these days. Yeah. So
the exclusivity window passed long ago.
I agree.
It sure did. And we can always kick them out. We can always just kick them out if it doesn't.
Oh, sure, yeah. Because we've done that
I'm
before.
not worried.
Yes,
I'm not worried about it.
Yeah.
Most people kind of self-select out, but that's another conversation.
He means me.
Yes. And like 20% of the other
or just
on that chat
refuse to participate, even though they are still part of the group.
Occasionally, I'll just check in and see what Tim and Jenny are saying, and I'll laugh and move along, nod my head. And
they're drunk again. Ha ha ha.
They're talking about analingus again. See, you guys want to get in on this chat. I'm just telling you. I'm trying to pitch this. Well, this is what you want to be a part of.
Oh, yeah. It's super fun.
Yeah. So if you want to be a part of that hot action, let us know. So,
speaking of hot action.
Thank you. Perfect segue. Took the words out of my mouth.
So, I want to tell you a little story about what happened to me after I watched the match that you picked, Tim.
Okay.
You picked Fall Brawl in 1996.
Yes, I did.
And so I watched Fall Brawl in 1996. And then...
You watched the whole show?
No, I watched the WarGames match.
Okay.
And then unbeknownst to me, the network continued on into 1997's Fall Brawl, right?
Yes.
But I paused it somewhere. And so when I came back and I saw it paused on Fall Brawl 97, I thought, oh, fuck, I watched Fall Brawl 97 instead of 96. And I had a little mini meltdown because I'm a trash person, and I'm like, of course this is what I did. Yes. But you did. But then I was like, wait, I read the wiki for this, and this is what I watched, and like, wait, what? And so I just had a little moment there. But anyway, I was really happy that I didn't have to go back and watch.
So really what happened, Jenny, was you, much like the total package Lex Luger, you had a crisis of conscience.
Don't ever compare me to Lex Luger. But yes, that's what happened.
Well, we'll get into this. We're going to have a chance to say a lot of bad things about Lex Luger.
Yeah, we will.
Lex Luger, you want to talk about a trash person. Lex Luger is the worst friend that there has ever been.
He is. Thank you for saying that.
Well, spoken like a sting, Mark, but okay.
Okay. Well, oh, man. See, you're just between a rock and a hard place here, because this is some drama that rests on this long-standing wrestling relationship that, boy, if you're not on board for it, it may fall flat for you. So
yeah, because
we can talk
Jenny,
about
there's
this.
like a year of backstory for this too.
Yeah, I had a feeling.
At least, yeah. And this is, we'll just say it's, again, Fall Brawl, 1996, not 1997, although there is a pretty infamous WarGames match on that show you should check out. But This was from September 16th of 1996. The Lawrence Joel Veterans Memorial Coliseum. Why are all of our coliseums and arenas that we've visited tonight dead?
Well,
they're all memorials. They are deceased. Yeah. But this is in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. We are in Horseman
country.
We're in fucking Ric Flair country.
It is. Okay, so I will just say that, first off, it is hard to believe that this is our first appearance of the New World Order on our podcast. However, one of the things that I have loved about doing this show is really getting out of my comfort zone. I think it would have been really easy but kind of boring to spend all of the time that I've had doing the show with you guys just looking at the matches from the very specific WCW Monday Night Wars period, right? Because that's what I'm most familiar with. Mm-hmm. But I think one of the benefits of doing this podcast, and it's a match-centric podcast that we do, is we want to, I don't know about you guys, but I want to talk about actual good matches. I think that's, or notably bad matches. You know what I mean?
Right,
like,
right.
Not a lot of middle ground there. And it's not something that the NWO period of WCW is known for, good matches. Like, storylines, yes, absolutely. Phenomenal storytelling, doo-doo shit matches. That's just kind of their legacy. But here, I just think we have the perfect balance. It's story and ring work, to me anyway.
Yeah.
And I guess we should maybe provide some context, right? This is I would consider the second major collision between these two factions since that initial six-man tag, of course, at Bash at the Beach. That's where we saw the formation of the New World Order. And the NWO, it's been running roughshod over WCW for months now. And here we've got some of the promotion's biggest stalwarts. They are putting their differences aside. They're going to take the fight back to these interlopers. They're going to do it at WarGames. And we've got, notably here, both teams basically going into the event claiming the allegiance of Sting, who is near and dear to your heart, Greg, and to yours as well, Jenny. You just have to admit it. Just go with it. So initially it looks like Sting is WCW through and through, but it's on that Go Home Nitro, and I believe it's in Columbus, Georgia. Shout out Nick Duke. Lex Luger, here we go again, assaulted in that rain-soaked parking lot of the arena by someone who, he sounds like Sting, looks like Sting. Indeed, Lex Luger believes he is Sting, his very best friend in the wrestling business. And that raises the very real possibility now, going into this pay-per-view, that Sting has defected. And that's what's looming over this match here. Whose side is Sting on? Wow, a lot to unpack. And we will do that. But I just want to turn it over now to you guys. Greg, your thoughts on this match, being the Sting mark that I know you are.
This was, from a WCW perspective, probably the most into a storyline that I had ever been as a wrestling fan. Certainly WCW. And I was a huge Sting fan, as you guys know. I remember watching that Nitro. I vividly remember watching that Nitro. And I could not believe my eyes when Sting attacks Lex outside of that limo, and then the pouring down rain. And I admit, I thought Sting joined the NWO at that point. I was
they sold it like it was Sting. They weren't questioning, is this really Sting? I mean, the announcers were awestruck.
And in my head, I'm justifying it. I would have been 12 at this time. So I'm justifying it as, well, maybe Sting's setting them up. Maybe Sting is trying to infiltrate the New World Order to set them up. Surely he wouldn't have sold out. He'd never sell out. So I still had hope that come the pay-per-view, there would be some answers as to what was going on. I never believed that Sting would sell out to the NWO, but I also, I know what I saw, and I thought it was a great twist. Then I was thinking, well, maybe maybe Sting got wind that Lex was a traitor. I don't know.
Okay.
So as background to all of this, before we get into what happens the night of this show, for the previous year, so Lex Luger returns to WCW about 1 year ago from where we're at the show, in the fall of 1995. And when he comes over, Lex Luger is a slimy, scheming character who gets Jimmy Hart as his manager. And the whole time that he's there, Sting is the only one who supports him because Sting believes that Lex Luger is a good man. He believes that Lex is a great person, a friend of his that he's known for the last 10 years in the business. And so Hogan and Savage keep telling Sting, hey, this guy's a snake, you can't trust him. And Sting actually steps up to the top baby faces, Hogan and Savage, and tells them, no, if you won't accept Lex, then you can't accept me either. So
he's maybe flawed, but has a good heart.
Yeah, he has a good heart, and Lex plays this up because when Sting's around, Lex will smile and slap the hands of the fans. But the minute that Sting turns his back, Lex is pulling away, and he's scolding the fans and yelling at them and stuff. It's a brilliant storyline. So it lasts over the course of a year to build up. But the point being that Sting went out of his way to believe Lex, to defend Lex after every turn. And so going into this pay-per-view event, there's all this drama and upset and ominous tone in the air. Even the announcers have this air of like they're at a funeral because, my God, Sting defected. Mm-hmm. If Sting defected, the franchise of WCW, then who's left? And
we're lost. Basically.
We're lost. The war is lost at this point if we've lost Sting. But by God, we're going to go down fighting, and that's sort of the implication. We're going to go down fighting. They do a promo backstage with Flair and Arn and Lex, where they almost concede defeat because they say the Horsemen aren't even getting involved in this. We're going to have 3-on-4, and we're going to go to war, baby. And they're ominous. Lex has lost a friend, and then Sting walks in a shot that would never happen in WWE because it's not a perfect shot. You get the back of Sting's head and facing the Horseman and Luger, and so as they're standing. By the way, in this promo, Ric Flair refers to Mike Tenay as Gene, but Gene.
It's an emotional night.
So Sting comes in and he says, guys, listen, all I want is a moment of your time. All I want is a moment of your time. Arn's ready to fight. Arn's got his dukes up. Flair saying, nah, brother. And then Lex is in the background, not willing to listen to a word that Sting's saying. And Sting says, I'm telling you, Lex, I just want to tell you, it wasn't me. It wasn't me.
It wasn't me, Lex.
And then Lex says, I looked at you in the eyes. You're my best friend in the world. I looked you in the eyes. I know it was you. I'm telling you it was you. I know it was you, Sting. And then Sting goes, well, I guess I'll see you out there. And he walks off. So right there, Sting tried. He tried. He reached out and tried to level with them and get them to listen to reason. And Lex says, wrongly, I looked you in the eyes, Sting, and I know it was you. He didn't even know his best friend when he looked him in the eyes. What a lousy excuse for a human being.
It's Lex Luger, so, I mean, seems right.
Well, with friends like that, Jenny, who needs enemies?
Yeah, I mean, with friends like Lex Luger.
And I'm so glad that you brought that up, Greg. And by the way, I could not have said it better myself. That's in a lot of what I wanted to unpack in this match is, there is enough doubt cast on Sting here. I mean, this is one of those time periods where, like you said, it's so ominous. Just it feels like anything can happen, that what you're watching, the NWO are like genuinely dangerous, right? In a way that you hadn't really encountered before as a wrestling fan. Just that cloud of suspicion.
A level of stakes that had never existed in wrestling before.
Mm-hmm.
At least in my eyes.
The paranoia, the trust that's running wild. It's followed the NWO really since their debut. And there's a feeling like maybe Sting could join this stable after all. Hogan turned, and that was something we thought unthinkable at the time. So if the unthinkable has already happened, then what's left? Just the improbable, you know? Mm-hmm. And then again, you're looking at Luger, like you said, always shifty in his own allegiances, especially, you know, just tracing back to his return to WCW. And there was never any real resolution to that tension between himself and Sting that played out earlier in the year, right? Mm-hmm. What had happened was the NWO happened, and they just steamrolled over all of these issues, these kind of simmering issues in the WCW mid-card. And I always go back to that Bash at the Beach tag match where Luger gets taken out pretty early on, which normally you would think, like, that's telegraphing a heel turn for him. He's going to be the guy. He's going to be the third man. And they subverted expectations there quite brilliantly, I will add. So Luger kind of emerges as this big baby face who was vindicated and proven right for doubting Hogan all along. But he's still kind of a weasel, you know. He's still Lex Luger. He's kind of an asshole.
A little bit.
Yeah, and going into this match, we also have to consider that he is teaming here with Ric Flair, with Arn Anderson. They are 3/4 of what was a pretty dominant early iteration of the Four Horsemen, who have some experience with this type of match. And these were the guys that Luger was palling around with when he debuted in WCW all the way back in 1987. They know each other. They work extremely well together. But is Sting going to be able to coexist with this group? Well, we see what goes down here. Turns out that, you know, never should have doubted Sting, Lex Luger. Because the one time this guy asks Luger, his best friend, to put his faith in him, and this means a lot coming from Sting, by the way. The dude who has always, you know, extended the hand to anybody who's asked for it, no matter how many times he was stabbed in the back. The one time he wants that trust reciprocated, he doesn't get it. And I just thought that played out so beautifully.
And not just his best friend, but the people who had never turned their backs on him, the fans. Yeah. So many of the fans doubted, and just the fact that they doubted was enough to push him over the edge, because he was somebody that had given everything to WCW, had always done the right thing. Even when people like Hogan or Savage were being dicks to him, he was always going out of his way to do the right thing. And there was a segment of the fan base that doubted, that thought he had joined the NWO, and he couldn't care less what Ric Flair or Arn Anderson think of him, but the fact that Luger and the fans didn't trust him and didn't give him the benefit of the doubt made him think that all of his years of sacrifice not been worth it. So, yeah, it's really operatic if you think about it. And then, I know I'm skipping ahead of the match here, but fast-forwarding a year and how this plays into the ultimate storyline of Sting and his ultimate redemption, it really makes Hollywood Hogan even more of a great villain, because it's almost this Emperor Palpatine-like long-form game that Hogan is playing here, where by sowing the seeds of dissension with stuff like the Giant turn and his own turn, Hogan manages to take WCW's greatest weapon away from it in the form of Sting, which basically takes him off the board for an entire calendar year and allows the NWO to gain this giant strategic advantage. And only in the latter half of 97 do we see the plan start to fall apart as Sting gets his wits about him and gets a plan of attack and starts to show his face again on the side of the good guys. So such great long-form storytelling here.
Absolutely. Jenny, we haven't heard too much from you. We've been dominating this with our Sting lovin' here, as Greg and I are wont to do. What was your takeaway here? Story and match, whichever, wherever you want to start.
Well, like I said, I enjoy listening to you guys, what you guys think about it. So trust me, I'm not bored at all listening to that. I was in a real shitty mood when I turned this match on. I was just like, I just have to get this done, for the podcast and make my sacrifices like I do, well, like a grown up. And then this match turned my mood around.
Oh my God.
I've kind of been very picky on the cages that we talked about. But this cage, I think, probably stood up the best of the three that we watched.
They kind of got it together by this.
They knew how to solder things together or something.
Klondike had managed to focus much more on this one.
He got the panties out of his mouth or whatever. I don't know, but he was on the ball. But
oh wow, that was almost a spit take.
But how much do I love Arn Anderson? He just makes everything better, just so much better.
Yeah. I mean, we served you up some Arn here. I mean, if nothing else, you had to be. He started the match, so
and a rare glimpse of Arn. Babyface Arn Anderson too.
Yes, which I don't know. It's so good. As much as I love the bad guys, I don't know. Whatever he wants to do, he can just do, and I will just buy it. I don't care.
Well, the great thing is he still has the attitude of badass Horseman AA here. It's not like he's been watered down now as a character playing the babyface role. It's just he's up against this faction that's hated even more than the Horsemen.
Now. Yeah. It was such an odd spot for him, really. I can't imagine how he must have felt there. But anyway, I love Dusty, of course. So that's just another wonderful addition to this. It's so funny how united Dusty and even Bobby and Tony are. And Bobby is just incredulous that he's agreeing with things that Tony and Dusty say. Bobby has a real tough time during this match. He takes it real hard, and
doesn't it add to the sense of stakes?
It does. It really does.
I always thought that because just this lifelong cartoonish heel of Bobby Heenan suddenly treating this like this is life and death.
Yeah.
And he's on the side for once of the same side that the fans are on. That by God, our livelihoods are on the line here. This is not just wrestling. This is not just championships. This is our livelihood here.
And I get the feeling that he's just itching to be part of it. He kind of wants to be in on it. And he's frankly maybe sloshed during his commentary there. It sounded a little
debatable.
Yeah. We'll see. But I thought that Dusty, as much as Heenan was sort of angsty about it, Dusty was more on the fence about it. He was firmly against NWO, but he still wanted to be Dusty about it. I don't know. He was great. He was wonderful. I love him so much. And then
well, he's conflicted, I think, because as much as he hates the NWO, he has this long history with the Horsemen.
Right.
And he's trying to be the company guy here and rally the troops.
Yes.
And he has a great call early on where he starts marking out and he goes, "Go with it, AA!"
Yeah.
And
yes,
he
I
even
wrote
acknowledges
that down.
he acknowledges to himself that he cannot believe.
Yeah, I can't believe I'm saying that right now. I can't believe I'm saying what I'm saying. But you get on him, AA.
I can't believe I wrote for AA.
And it just goes to show just how effectively they are selling this paradigm shift in the company.
And Dusty even, because this is his baby. WarGames is Dusty's most, that's the creation he's proudest of in wrestling. And so when the match starts, he draws on that history and he says, I'm going to tell you what could be the key to this match right here. Is Arn Anderson has started more WarGames matches than any other competitor. That could be the difference in our favor.
And you buy it. I mean, you really, it has a certain credibility to it.
And then, okay, so I'm not going to say I totally bit on the fake Sting, but like I might have bit a little bit on the fake Sting.
Sure.
He did a good job of mimicking Sting's movement.
Yes, those splashes in the corners. I was like, I don't know.
And even the backhanded punches that he was doing.
Yeah, I mean, that dude legit looked like Sting. They look identical. And I admit, I'm a noob. I don't know shit, but I bought. And
it helped that it was in Sting's weird hair phase, where it kind of got the shaggy hair going a little bit.
And he wore the jacket. I mean, I just I bought it, and then when the real Sting came out, I was like, of course I bought it. Of course, it was the fake Sting. And then, Bobby's losing his mind. Nobody knows what's going on. It's like this, as much as the previous match felt like I said, like an orgy, and where everybody was doing something quality wherever you looked, this sort of broke down a lot quicker to where you got to where guys were just standing around watching guys do things, and it wasn't as action packed.
Story kind of takes over towards the end.
Yeah, it takes over the wrestling part of it, and I get it, and that works for me. I'm good with that. But I actually was surprised that you did pick this match, Tim, because as extra as it gets towards the end, I thought it might be a little bit over the line for you. Like, what are we doing?
No. Well, I'll tell you what it is. It is a lot of story, but I've talked about how I think the story and the match kind of complement one another so well. And, I mean, we haven't talked too much about the match itself, just the content of the body of work for what it is.
It doesn't have the spots that the other matches had.
Right. It doesn't quite have those same spots.
And no blood.
No blood, that's true.
No blood. That's kind of a mark against it a little bit. But, I mean, I did kind of think everybody got their shit in and got a little bit of shine. So, that worked for me pretty well. But, and God, talk about the Horsemen in a face position, Arn Anderson as a face. Talk about Flair, the heel face role reversal between Flair and Hogan. That is just so unusual. And
wild to watch, man.
Yeah, that's fascinating to me anyway for how rare it really is. But
what about the shot where Flair just starts going nuts with the ball shots on everybody?
Yes, it is getting cheered for it. Yes. I mean, people are going nuts for this. Flair being the dirtiest player in the game, but, fighting the good fight for a change here.
He and Hogan get a really good, head-to-head
matchup. They get a little sequence. Yeah, they get a nice sequence here. And I guess I will just, to try to make the point for the match itself, I thought that the time intervals, specifically in a
oh my God
match, it served the storyline and furthered the storyline very, very well. Like that fourth man reveal and the build to it is just so electric. And when NWO Sting comes out, it kind of confirms everyone's worst fears, and it's super deflating for 2 minutes anyway, because such is the structure of the match. That's not the end. We're going to do this for 2 minutes. All hope is lost. And then, boom, here comes the real, genuine article, Sting. And by the way, I'll mention kind of the way that you just film and shoot a WarGames match. The visuals are a little bit obscured, right? You're trying to shoot through the cage, and there's a lot going on, and you can't see things as well as you would in a regular wrestling ring. So I think that aspect lends itself very well to just helping to obscure this guy's identity, that he's not the real Sting, although he's got the mannerisms down, he's got the look, but just the fact that you can't see him clearly.
And there's a pocket of fans when the fake Sting gets in there that starts chanting, "We want Sting." So there's some of the live crowd was already in on it, that this is not the real Sting, in a way that we couldn't necessarily tell watching it on TV.
Yep, exactly. So that's why I say particularly this match and the structure and just the whole how you book a WarGames match, just kind of textbook booking, by the way, but complements the story that they're trying to sell here so very effectively. I mean, of course, you've got the NWO oozing confidence, knowing that they hold all the cards here, knowing that they don't really have Sting in their corner, but they've sown enough doubt to just undermine WCW. And when Sting finally makes his presence felt, you're thinking, okay, this is going to turn the tide of the match now in WCW's favor. And it does. I mean, he's cleaning house, right? But because everyone doubted him, he walks out. And he's making the point, demonstrating to his teammates, they could have beaten the NWO if they had just trusted him and worked together. He's telling them, look, guys, my way works. If you had just signed on, we could have done this. But nope. One time, I asked you to do this, to meet me halfway, like I've done so many times in the past. You wouldn't do it. So you know what? Fuck you. This is what
Almost literally what he says. And like Luger comes after him and he says, "Was that good enough for you?" And then he flips him off basically and leaves.
Was that good enough for you? Yeah. Walks out. And now, I mean, this is it. We're at the match beyond, right? So he's hung WCW out to dry effectively, and Luger, such a adding insult to injury here, where he has to submit now to the fake Sting with the Scorpion Deathlock. So
with the Scorpion Deathlock with Hollywood Hogan applying a face lock to him as well.
Yes, no doubt.
But
I don't know. Maybe I'm gushing too much for this match. I've seen it a million times, but I always find more to love every time I go back to this match.
I was going to say, this is not a match that I remembered very fondly as a match. I remembered the angle very well and loved it. But I enjoyed this more than I thought I would, going back and watching it. I really had a lot of fun watching it. I thought the commentary was great, which Jenny was talking about earlier. It added... I love the stakes of it. I love that feeling that something genuine is on the line here in a way that maybe it wasn't in previous WarGames matches. This actually felt like the winning team was going to be getting something out of this other than just revenge. And even though there were no necessarily, I don't know if there were any stakes attached to the match, but it was just, the feel of it was different. Like, my God, this is life and death. The commentary was great. The guys, the match, it didn't do anything. It didn't reinvent the wheel. But you got the outsider's edge. You got the jackknife. You got the big leg. You got the figure four. You got the spine buster. They got moments to shine. The NWO got their asses kicked for a little while, which was nice to see. And you got the impression that Sting could have ended this war before it really got going. Sting could have put an end to this right now. But because of the brilliant plan of Hollywood Hogan, it didn't come to pass. And instead, the NWO maintains its momentum over in the war against WCW. And so I thought it was great storytelling. It's not as action-packed as 92 or 91, but on the other hand, it's a match that feels like it means more in some ways because of what's on the line.
And because of all the post-match. I mean, it just kept going on and on and on. And they, like, sneakily, like, lifted the cage up off the ring, like, very, like, slyly. It was very well done because I didn't notice it. And then Savage comes out and gets his beating, of course, like he does. Hogan. And then fucking Liz runs out there. I'm like, oh my God, Liz. And then then Hogan like spray paints her dress. I'm like, oh my shit, what is going on right here?
Mm-hmm.
Giant
we're already
out.
already heating up the next thing here.
And it's just pretty much chaos at this point.
You get that shot of Lex Luger crawling up the aisle, even though he's lost the match, begging for his friend to come back.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
I particularly enjoyed that shot right there. But Hogan is such a fucking dick. Oh my God.
He really is. He's such a great bad guy here.
Oh my God.
I wanted him. You just keep waiting for Savage to make the comeback, right? Like,
no, Savage is he's
but
done.
I mean, the giant lifted him seemingly 25 feet in the air.
Yeah, like 3 times.
The giant, by the way, how freaking awesome was the Big Show? Like,
I know.
Yeah.
Right.
Literally awesome. Like in the textbook definition of that, like what a freak of nature in all the best ways. Like
he I will say that he is a stay tuned for this podcast. If one of you guys don't choose the Giant in WCW, I will at some point.
I already know my Giant match. But anyway.
Okay. Very good.
And then, I mean, it like I said, it just keeps going on and on. They just, kind of get Liz kind of like limping Savage off, and then they take over the commentator's booth. So Bobby's already just heartbroken, and then Tony and Dusty just leave, and they get on they put the headsets on. Yeah. Nash puts the headset on, and it's just done. It's their show now. Like, this is what it is now.
The level of vitriol from the announcers while this is happening too. Oh my God. Yeah, Hollywood Hogan is the lowest form of humanity that has ever existed. Yeah. Like Bobby Heenan gets a great bit where he starts talking about, like, listen guys, I've done a lot of bad things over the years. I've done things that I'm not proud of. I never did anything like this. This is that is the worst form of scum I've ever seen in my life.
We are like one step removed from calling him a human commode, as Paul Bearer would bear the brunt of. I will say, speaking of Hollywood Hogan here, this match is sort of a sneaky good look at his, for lack of a better term, just ring generalship, which I know a lot of people don't think of when it comes to Hogan matches, but he's a heel now. And traditionally speaking, the heel is going to call the match and is going to dictate the pace here. And for him to spend as much of his career as a face, making the hot comeback, having to sell, feed and sell, that whole thing, now he's got to really carry the match. And for as much as a, let's say, minimalist as Hogan is in ring, he more than carries his end of the bargain here in this match. Just when he comes in and kind of reasserts that advantage for the NWO, I thought that the landscape of the match really shifted, and it kind of hit that second gear,
Yes, I agree. And he allows himself to get his ass kicked in a way that you wouldn't necessarily associate with Hulk Hogan. A lot of people think, even as Hollywood Hogan, that he just dominated matches, and in some cases he did, but I think this is an example of him really showing a lot of ass, so to speak, and letting Ric Flair, a guy that he had dominated in the past, kind of flip the tables on him. And to your point, Tim, puts in a better night of work than Hall and Nash did, I thought.
Yeah, he kind of did. Yep. Which is, Hall is kind of, if there's any workhorse of the NWO, hard to say. It's probably Scott Hall. Smart choice starting the match with him, especially with Arn. But yeah, Hogan, credit to him, he put in work here. Minor touch that I thought was worth commenting on. You'll notice that the teams aren't all out there at once, as we've seen in other matches. They come out one at a time, and that just goes back to my point about how the NWO are holding all the cards here. At the same time, they know that they are not going to show their hand. Like, we know that Hall, Nash, and Hogan are in the match, but we don't know who that fourth man is. So just furthering those mind games that they're playing and how they're taking advantage of just the egos in WCW and playing everyone against each other. Just
again, stuff. Tony brings it up on commentary. Guys, I don't believe I've ever seen a WarGames match where they're not at ringside. And another thing, Nick Patrick, the evil referee, in the cage. Yes, on the inside of the cage. And Tony brings that up. I've never seen a referee on the inside of a WarGames. Maybe it was Dusty that brought it up. But yeah, I think that approach, Tim, worked. It would not have worked, I don't think, as well in previous WarGames matches. But for this one, it was the dramatically correct choice to make.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So the NWO planned for this. They knew it would happen, and WCW just played into their hands perfectly. Good stuff in the formative days of this new world organization of wrestling.
And like any great evil plan, there's that moment where they have to have a moment of doubt. If maybe we were wrong, brother. Yeah. When Sting comes in and starts laying them out, and they have to think to themselves, maybe we miscalculated. We didn't think he'd come back and do it, and then he leaves, and then it's like everything is going according to plan.
Yeah, they did their work.
Now they have Miss Elizabeth involved. They can make her say that she loves loves Hogan, even though she don't.
Love you for that.
It's. I mean, the birth of the birth.
I mean, it's coming up. I mean, watch.
It is. This is what I was leading into.
So it's only a few weeks out,
and it's building into an evil version of that you can and you get a little glimpse of that in the corner. I don't think he says it here, but he and the Giant cut a promo into the camera in the corner of the ring while they're beating down Savage. And he doesn't say "yon," but I can tell that it's a silent "yon," where it's like, you can feel it in, be like, the Giant here is gonna show Macho Man exactly what the NWO's all about, dude.
Oh, tremendous! So, all that is to say, I love this match. Like I said, I think I love it more every time I watch it. And I also believe that to the extent any WarGames or just big-time NWO match can be considered a hidden gem, that this sort of qualifies.
You think so?
I do, because people tend to remember this angle pretty well, but the match itself, I think, is a bit forgotten. And I would just implore people to, with all of this in mind, with all of this background, all of this context, everything we've talked about, reflected on how effective the story is, just fire up the match and try to enjoy it. Jenny, you said it turned your mood around, which I think speaks volumes for a fucking pro wrestling match.
It did, considering there wasn't any blood in it. I mean, usually that's what does it
I know.
for me,
I know. I'm right there with you.
I mean, maybe seeing Elizabeth get spit on and, like, spray painted did something for me, but...
Oh, my.
I am an evil bitch, so...
Me too.
Elizabeth was looking pretty fetching at this time.
Was she?
Not a fan?
Nah, I never have been a fan of Elizabeth. I'm, like, the only one, but...
Wow.
That's a controversial statement.
What about Woman?
Woman's good. Sherry's my favorite.
Okay, that's fair. So, I stand behind it. I love this match. I hope everyone else does too. God, what else, you guys?
God, what else?
I like the match a lot too. I'm glad you picked it, Tim. I thought we had a very, very good cross section of WarGames matches here. Good WarGames matches, I should say, where each of the matches was different. Each of them had a different story that it was telling, And I thought each of them was good in their own rights. So yeah, enjoyed the whole exercise.
Do you guys have any honorable mentions when it comes to WarGames?
Oh, yes. Yes, the original WarGames, the very first one, which if you go onto the WWE Network and go into the collections, there's actually a WarGames collection that has all of the available filmed, televised WarGames that they have right now at their disposal. There may be some fan cam footage of other ones, I don't know. But I would recommend really any of the first 3 WarGames, those first 2 in 87 that were televised, and 88. Also, all 3 of those are wonderful. I'm trying to think of another. Of course, the 94 WarGames, which we've already reviewed here.
We covered, yes.
On the podcast, is a very good one. Probably the best no blood WarGames, I think, was that one. And another one that may be divisive, I really like the 97 one. I think it's a good match.
I almost went with that one. I just felt like it was a little too obvious as WarGames matches went. Because like you, I was saying, I was like, okay, you could do 87, at least what's on the network, very easily. 97 at the same time. So right away, I sort of disqualified them, even though I really do enjoy them a lot. I will say that I almost went in a different direction as well by choosing 93 with of course the Shockmaster, which just has to be seen to be believed. And then, I mean, talk about going in a different direction. Almost, I mean, just for the briefest glimmer of a second, considered WarGames 2000, which only because it is one of the most garbage shit matches you will see in WCW.
The match might have sucked, bro, but the ratings, dude.
They suck too.
They suck too. But listen, that's the point. Steve, that's what I've been telling you, Steve. Bro, that was the idea.
All right. Well, whose turn is it to pick next?
It's a great question.
I think it's Greg's.
I think it's mine. Yeah, I think it's mine, and I think I already know what I'm going to pick for our next show. I think, and if you guys would like, I can go ahead and
why not?
Please, let's start a tradition here of revealing our hand, unlike the NWA WarGames 96.
So we've done tag teams, we've done solo wrestlers, we've done a match type now. I want to kind of get back to a solo wrestler though, but I want to do something different that we haven't done. We've done very much the Southern traditional WCW style of wrestling. Mm-hmm. I want to go back and I want to highlight a different style of wrestling that WCW also brought to the forefront. And so for my selection, I'm going to profile what I feel is the greatest high flyer of all time, Rey Mysterio Jr.
Yeah.
Wow.
I like it. Bold
I
choice.
love me some WCW Rey. Mm-hmm. Ooh. Yeah. Well, now we'll be spending, I would venture to say, a bit more time in the 90s, in the late 90s, which we haven't done too much of here on this show. Yeah. So, with all that being said, Greg Phillips, where can people find you on the social meds, as we say, because we're into a briefs on this show?
Well, people can see me tweet about Madge and other things at gphillips8652. And I am happy to follow back anyone who follows me.
Okay. You got anything coming up? Any podcasts, any other ventures you'd like to promote?
Well, Hard Traveling Fanboys, we are currently in the midst of Spider Month. We're just a theme monthing away at the HTF. Every month now, it seems. And so we've got a month of Spider-Man related activities. We're reviewing the brand new movie, Spider-Man Far From Home. We're going to take a look at a classic Spider-Man story, Kraven's Last Hunt, by J.M. DeMatteis. We are going to take a look. What else are we going to do this month? We're going to do a countdown of our favorite Spider-Man villains, which was, we've already recorded that one, and it was certainly a unique episode given my controversial takes on some classic Spider-Man villains. And we're going to go finally off the page to do Sam Raimi's original Spider-Man movie. And this has been many years in the making because I have spent the better part of 2 decades arguing why Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin is a god-awful doo-doo shit performance. However, it appears my opinion may be changing.
What?
Ooh.
I'm not ready to acknowledge it yet. Nick's convinced it's going to happen, but we're going to see. We're going to rewatch the movie, and we're going to see if my take on Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin has changed since 2002.
Wow.
That is impressive. That is a stacked slate on the hard-traveling fanboys. You know, no big deal. It's just the longest-running
weekly episodic comic book podcast
in all
Place Nation.
Good enough for Gupwork.
I was really proud of Andy for getting it right, too, on Laughing Theater.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he did.
Andy's great.
Andy is great. I agree.
Jenny, where can people find you on the social meds?
On the social meds, I'm at Jenny Cruz 2814. And like we've talked about, I had the Stranger Things Geek and Sassy episode with you, Tim. And then...
With me!
With you. And then I had the Crockett Cup 86 episode with Drew and Matt. So check both of those out. And that's all I got so far.
Yeah, and as I said earlier, you can find me on Twitter at Cyke68, CYKE68. I think you've kind of already covered my upcoming podcast or immediate past podcast appearances, popping those peasies for me to say. Should have another Marvel Age podcast coming up just in the weeks ahead, not too far out from our second installment of 1971 on Marvel Age. Beyond that, just stick around for next month, where evidently we will be covering Rey Mysterio. He was junior in WCW. So, we will see you next month on Talk'n WCW.